10, so I'll let you get started if you'd like. I'll keep my eye on the waiting room in case we need to bring anyone else in.
Thank you, everyone. So my name is Mike Wazakowski. I'm the chair of PTAC. Felice, could you discuss the rules of engagement for this meeting, please?
With me here is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. He will work alongside Mike Wazakowski to facilitate the meeting proceedings. Adam and myself will facilitate the Zoom portion of the meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and public access cable channel 25. During the meeting, when you are not participating, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found in the lower left-hand side of the Zoom menu next to the video icon. When you are muted, a red line will appear over the icon. Muting your microphone during the meeting will make it easier for everyone to hear. You'll just have to remember to unmute if and when you want to speak. In some cases, we may mute or unmute people as needed to minimize distractions during the meeting. Please remember to state your name and title for the benefit of those listening remotely. You can turn your video on and off by clicking on the video icon on the menu. For the purposes of this public meeting, please keep your video on when you are participating in the meeting. When you are not participating, it is okay to turn your video off. Just remember to turn your video back on when you are participating. If you're participating by phone, you can click *6 to unmute your phone. For those using Zoom, somewhere on your screen you will see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view shows the active speaker. Gallery view tiles all the meeting participants. Now I'll turn the meeting back over to PTAC Chair Mike Wazakowski.
Thank you very much. Actually, the next item will be back to you because we need to do roll call next. So we need to go through PTAC roster and who's here.
Sure. Lance Fay.
Here.
Max Schieber.
Here.
Mike Wazakowski.
Here.
Nick Kuzmiak.
Here.
Alan Ackland.
Here.
Gregory Critchlow.
Here.
Bill Wilson.
Here.
August Rudisell.
Here.
Freddie Gipp.
Here. I believe that's it then. Excellent. Thank you very much, Felice. First item on our agenda is we received public comment late breaking either last night or this morning that we've put on the agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the letter? Okay. Okay, so I just want to make sure that we address what Mr. Thornburg has brought up here in terms of the crash history around the Lawrence Public Library and issues in terms of how we are providing people who are using bus stop near us shelter to wait for their bus to arrive. Do any PTAC members want to address specific aspects of the letter?
It goes me at PTAC, sort of, but not on this agenda item. I think it may actually have more to do with the, I guess, the discussion around the downtown transfer center.
Okay, we can table discussion until then. Anybody else? Is that okay?
It's Al Ackland, PTAC member. Did he actually cite any incidents on the letter? I took a quick read and it looked like there wasn't any indication of some kind of a car accident or something at one time, but it was not very specific. So it's kind of hard to run that down. I don't know if I missed something in the read.
I read through it and I did not see any notes in terms of accidents that related to the fact that there is a bus transfer facility there. There are buses that drive by. So that was my estimation of Mr. Thornburg's comments. I do see, however, he is on the line. Mr. Thornburg, would you like to say anything about your letter? More than what you've already written and provided to us? Okay. Hearing nothing from Mr. Thornburg on the line and nothing from any other PTAC members. We are trying our best to move the downtown transfer facility from across the public library. We will discuss 3 of the locations downtown, none of which include the block between 700 and 800 on Vermont Street. Unfortunately, we are at odds with scheduling that anything that we do to try and move it quicker is going to distract us from what we are able to do with the formal plans to move the full transfer facility to Bob Billings and Crestline and build a secondary one in the downtown location. As of right now, I believe our plans are that we have about 13 months to go before we open the new facilities. And I don't think we have any time and energy that we can spend on a temporary relocation that's ultimately going to produce a lot of the same kinds of issues that we have between the 700 and 800 block of Vermont.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I just want to note, Mr. Thornburg mentioned in the chat about bollards. So
I know one of the items mentioned in the letter that was attached referenced an accident, I believe, across the street on the west side by the library. I'm not sure when that happened. Bollards can certainly be a tool we can use to protect bus transfer areas. I don't know that we see enough recurring safety issues at our current location during service hours where we'd look towards investing in bollards at our current location. It's certainly a tool we can think about how we implement at our new developed facilities or at stops where we do see kind of recurring challenges with high-speed vehicles or vehicles that may crash. In its current location, the buses themselves act essentially as a barrier between the street and the sidewalk. But I just wanted to note that that discussion around bollards, I think, is a good one under certain circumstances. That could be a tool we could potentially use.
Okay, keep us apprised on any thoughts that you have in terms of proposals for putting some up.
And Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. The other thing I would note is we do have a member of the public here in the commission room with us this evening who I believe wanted to speak in the general public comment period.
Excellent.
Sir, did you have general public comment related to things not on the agenda you'd like to discuss?
Let me get situated here. Well, I read the article in last Wednesday's paper about putting a transfer station downtown and putting your main transit hub out at Crestline and Bob Billings. Well, I think we all know that there's 2 things that transit's supposed to do. One, move people. The other is encourage economic development. Crestline and Bob Billings does not do that at all. And if you're going to put a transfer station downtown in one of the parking lots, now you're using up parking space. The city commissioners have had letters from me, Adam's had a letter from me, dealing with building a parking garage down in the 800 block, 4-story, put your transfer hub down there, or your transit hub down there, with handicap parking, with electric charging stations, all the things you need. Then you can worry about taking parking space up because now you've created more parking space than what you're going to take away. And it just seems to me that the city commissioners did not let the transit authority or you guys make any decisions on where the transfer station was going to go. They're the ones that voted on it. I don't know what kind of input you guys had, but it doesn't look like to me that they gave you much input at all. And that's a shame, because you're the ones that are responsible for putting this thing all together in the first place. So I'm very disappointed in the city commission, and have been for quite some time over this issue. Cities don't put their transit hubs out in the middle of nowhere. They put it where it's going to help develop economic growth, and that's in the downtown area. I did some research on Big 12 universities. Their hubs are not near universities. They're downtown. That's where they want their people to go. Where's all the partying and everything? Downtown. At some point in time, parking is going to get so bad downtown that people will have to find another way of getting down there. And if you don't have a parking garage to accommodate that, you're going to have to use buses. So I'm very disappointed how this whole thing has transpired. Now, I don't know who was on the advisory board, but I think the city is about ready to make a $6 million mistake. Even for KU students, putting the transit hub out there at Bob Billings and Crestline does not serve them well either. And I don't know who came up with that idea, but it's not serving anybody in this community at all. It's just all you're worrying about is moving people, and you're not going to do a very good job at that. And that's all I have to say. I know I've been probably trying to ride a dead horse for quite a while, but I'm a firm believer in mass transit. And this city has an opportunity to really blossom in mass transit. There is one other thing. With electric cars, gas tax revenue is going to disappear eventually, and the states are not going to be able to build new highways. So when you want to get from point A to point B, you're either going to have to start looking at commuter rail or light rail. And the transit authority has to be prepared to be able to transport people down to the Amtrak station if commuter rail does become available. And I've been trying to work on that too. Kansas is not a big fan of commuter rail, but they're going to have to face the fact that they're not going to have money to build highways. So the only other option they have is commuter rail. So I think the transit authority needs to, it all goes hand in hand. If you look at cities that have transit authorities, not only do they have the buses, but they have light rail and they have commuter rail. Kansas City, buses and light rail. It's been very successful over there. We can't put trolleys in here. We can't use light rail in Lawrence. I'm well aware of that. But commuter rail from Lawrence to Kansas City would help alleviate traffic on the Turnpike and on K10. And the transit authority needs to be prepared that if that should happen, to be able to transport people down to Amtrak, to be able to let them ride back and forth. But the way things are being set up right now, you guys aren't going to be prepared for that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir.
You're welcome.
Would any members of the committee like to address the gentleman? Hearing none, let's proceed to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of minutes from our May 2021 session. As always, I will ask for amendments 3 separate times, and if we have no further amendments at that point, then the minutes will be deemed approved by unanimous consent. So do any PTAC members have any amendments to suggest to the minutes?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I might note there was a request in Mr. Thornburg's letter for an amendment to the minutes. Would ask PTAC members to consider that.
His note, I believe, is that we did not acknowledge discussion of the conclusion about the crash history 700 Vermont. Yes, I would like to confirm that in particular, we brought up the safety history of the 700 to 800 block on the Vermont Street. Are there any other any other amendments to the minutes from PTAC members? Any other amendments? Hearing no further amendments, meetings are approved by unanimous consent. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a presentation to PTAC from the firm designing and constructing the Multimodal Transfer Facility.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I'll briefly introduce our consultant team here. A number of you were able to join the meeting 1 week ago at the Multimodal Transportation Commission. There was a joint study session between MMTC and PTAC. The content you'll see tonight is pretty similar to that, but hopefully we can get into more of the questions you all might have, having had a little more time to look at and think about this. And with that, I will introduce Tony Kellen with Wendell Consultants, who I believe will begin the presentation.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, can you see my screen, Adam?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So I think this presentation has not changed a lot. We've added some slides, but so let's just jump right into it. Adam, do you want to do this first slide just to bring anybody that was not at the last meeting up to date on what we've done so far?
Sure. Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I won't go bullet by bullet, but this slide is just to demonstrate some of the engagement and public outreach we've attempted to do. It reaches back to
some of the engagement already done in the 2014 and 2018 studies, but more recently, some of the efforts related to reaching out to neighborhoods and getting input from downtown. Mid to late April, we had an immersion week with Wendell, our consultants here in town, doing a number of stakeholder meetings. I had mentioned the MMTC and PTAC joint meeting last week. We had a couple of public meetings last Wednesday that are recorded and on our project website, if any of you are not able to make those. And then after tonight, wanted to mention we do have additional opportunities tomorrow and Saturday at the public library. We're doing a few different tabling opportunities at the library, so we'll have concepts laid out on tables and able to talk through issues with folks. And then Saturday, we are doing more tabling, and we are also doing a walking tour of the sites downtown, and then taking a bus ride out to Bob Billings and Crestline to look at that site before returning downtown. So we had a press release go out, and I will put the details of that in the chat. Would welcome any of you if you'd like to join us at those opportunities to discuss.
Thank you, Adam. So just to highlight, when we were in town in April, we did what we referred to as immersion process, which is essentially just an intensive 3.5 days on site, focused completely on your project and nothing else. We had 9, as Adam mentioned, 9 stakeholder meetings, 3 meetings with city and university or client, as we would say. And then we also had 2 public meetings, and a number of other, many groups were involved, including bus operators and so forth. So just to kind of capture the essence of those primary topics of concern for Bob Billings for the multimodal, a lot of conversation about the Bob Billings and Crestline traffic, safe movement of pedestrians on and off that site, concerns for what amenities would be provided for not only the passengers, but also the bus operators. Maintenance weighed in that they would like to have some areas to store just some minor things to keep buses in service, where a minor repair could be done right at the multimodal center. We talked about the city's desire and the university's desire for sustainability elements in the project, including solar, how we handle water and those things. We heard from the neighborhood, making sure that our design fits with the neighborhood, is sensitive to light and noise issues, and then also addressing the connectivity issues with Greyhound and other ride-sharing services on that project as well. For downtown, we're doing a smaller, less buses, 5. We heard a lot about parking and how would parking be replaced that would be impacted. Making sure that we do a project that is welcoming and fits with the downtown character. Some concerns about passenger amenities, also bathroom facilities for the operators. And then consideration, just making sure that what we're doing is compatible with some of the downtown plans that are going on, that are in process right now, that might affect future redevelopment of any parking lot that we might impact. We also heard a lot about the farmers market. So we're going to jump right into the options. We'll go through these and then we will open it up for comment. So essentially we were tasked with providing 3 opportunities or design options, concepts really, if you will, for the multimodal and 3 for downtown. This is option or concept option number 1 at Bob Billings and Crestline. It uses the current drive down here. And again, maybe just to jump over to the right-hand side, the project design requirements that we were given were for 10 city buses to accommodate the largest coach, 40 feet. So 2 sawtooth bays for the commuter bus, Greyhound connections, 15 parking spaces in this area for staff, driver supervisors, and people coming to the site with a ride hail area, storage for bicycle racks and locker area. And then we went through a programming exercise to come up with the square footage. The city in their RFP suggested 5,000 square feet. We feel that around 4,000 will accommodate what you need. And there's room for expansion should you ever want to do that. Primary advantages of this option is you have a close proximity between vehicles and the multimodal access and the platform. The riders do not need to leave this platform for transfers. And the multimodal point and the bioswale natural environment can be a focal point from Bob Billings and Crestline. We do provide a emergency access for buses. There has been some feedback that we've received already about the lack of a desire to see this in these options, but we really can't design an intermodal or multimodal facility that has every vehicle having only one entrance and access point. So we have to show something as a prudent part of our design. And I just want to mention too, Scott Neal, you will see him on the screen. Scott is actually the project architect. I'm assisting in the project management of the project. So Scott is here to be part of the discussion as well. The only real disadvantages on this one is that, or the ones that we list anyway, is the bus emergency access is shared with non-transit vehicles, and bus operators and the riders have to leave the platform to access the multimodal. So you're going to see the project design requirements aren't really going to change in option 2 and 3. What we do in option 2 is we move the multimodal facility over here. We take the parking away from the bioswale area, enlarge that area, and move it over next to the university's west building. And the multimodal facility then happens here, and we have access for vehicles on this long drive, and we allow buses to go out directly on Bob Billings. So the buses have a shorter route. We can use less expensive pavement over here since we only have car traffic on it. So again, I'll just pop back. 1 has the vehicles using the Bristol entrance, buses going out to the other. Option 2 swaps that. Same concept for the island. Option 3, we take the multimodal facility and we place it on the island. So the real advantages for that is that, again, you still have the bus circulation separated from vehicle traffic. That's an important principle for these facilities. We don't want to mix auto and bus traffic. The passengers do not have to leave the platform to access services, nor do the bus operators, should they need a restroom, a snack, or a break. And we do have passengers that are being dropped off crossing here, and that's a blind right turn. so to speak, for drivers, or they're watching the right-hand back tire, and so we see that as a disadvantage as the pedestrians and users if they're leaving to go to a ride share or coming. We just have to be careful about that, but we see that as a potential disadvantage. So those are the three multimodal options. We are working on a fourth option based on a lot of feedback that we've already had in the public meetings and so forth. We can maybe talk just a little bit about that later, but we will stay on task here and go through the downtown first. So downtown has three options. We actually do a variation on a theme. The first option is Vermont between 8th and 9th. And in this option, what we do is, and let's just first go to the project design requirements. We have 5 sawtooth bays. I didn't mention it on the other multimodal presentation that I just did, but essentially for those that maybe, if there are any that have not been in a meeting so far, the sawtooth configuration basically allows any bus to come into any slot or depart any slot independent of all the others. So there is no queuing issues. There's no, searching for what bus you might be boarding. Those slots can be assigned and they're completely autonomous. We have a shelter for each facility where people can wait, and we also have an overhang over the front of the buses for those that want to wait as the bus is pulling in. We do not provide, like we did on the multimodal, a complete covered canopy because of cost. So we're going with the basic. Driver amenity is really a driver restroom. And then we have community green space here on option 1. And then we take the cycle track, which we feel would be on less than safe or optimum on the roadway as buses are pulling in and pulling out. And we bring the cycle track behind the platform and along, and then transition it back up as it approaches 9th. Impacts, we lose 18 metered spaces and 14 parking lot spaces to a net loss of 58. Trees, this really shouldn't say tree loss, it's really tree impact. So as we get further into design, we'll have green areas, we'll preserve the trees that we can and add back if we have to. It's not going to be just all continuous impervious hard surface. We do have a tabletop crosswalk here that allows the handicap parking or those that are using any of these businesses on this side of the street. Tabletop meaning it's slightly raised and has warning elements and signs that slow vehicles down so people can safely cross mid-block. I'm going to show you a side view of this, or a perspective, I guess. We keep the parallel parking on the other side of the street. We keep the middle turn lane, southbound and northbound lanes don't change. The bus goes in at an angle. We have a platform that's 27 feet, 10 inches wide, and we have a 10-foot cycle track on the back side. A variation, well, I think, Adam, do you want to do the parking after I show both, or do you want to do them separately?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I'll just do this briefly. We know we need to keep in mind parking impact and how we mitigate that. Of course, we want people to transition to using the bus more, so we hope that can help mitigate parking impact. But for those that we would be removing under this instance, we wanted to look at occupancy. Now, we've got data that we still need to pull in here from the 2017 parking study. But what you're looking at here is data just from about 10 days in this May that we were able to get data through our new parking technology, LPR, license plate reader system. We're able to see parking occupancy at different times of day. Now this is after university has already let out. Obviously, we're still experiencing some COVID recovery, so we understand the data is not perfect, but it is what we have, and we do plan to continue gathering this up through the commission meeting, so we have more data points. But in general, what you see here is on the left side in a black dotted line, the parking spaces that would be impacted by this option development. The pink spaces are 10-hour meters along Vermont, and you see those have pretty high occupancy from what we've seen in our data. So certainly something staff wants to keep our eye on, how we, if those spots are going away, how do we find other alternatives for people using the area for long-term parking? And the spaces in the lot itself, you see in the red graph, and those spaces you see a little more room for occupancy. Certainly as the day moves towards the afternoon, occupancy gets a little higher. But you'll see similar graphs on other options that we walk through. And like I said, we'll continue to gather data to have more data points and see what else we can find to help inform kind of the impact to the downtown area.
Need to unmute myself, sorry. The second option is just a variation on 1B. Nothing changes on this option. The only thing that changes is that we introduce diagonal angled street parking. And the consequence of that is that we add back, we'll go back to the screen, we add 37 angled parking spaces. So we have a net loss of 42 as opposed to a net loss of 58. So we gain a net of 16 on that. Looking at this perspective, what is sacrificed is the center turn lane, as well as 5 feet of the platform. The cycle track stays the same. We still have the same, safe distances behind the back of the buses on the Sawtooth. So that's the main difference between option 1A and 1B. And we have received feedback that this may not be desirable, starting this on Vermont. It would have the effect of slowing traffic down traditionally when you have just 2 lanes and you have diagonal parking. All right, so we'll go to the second option, parking considerations for Adam.
Sure, Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. The 2 graphs on the bottom reflect the same numbers you had looked at before. The new graph here just shows the 2-hour meters on the west side of Vermont and the utilization we saw for those during that 10-day period in May. So you see pretty low utilization, at least from what we've captured so far.
And the next option 2 is Vermont between 10th and 11th. With this design, same requirements to get 5 sawtooth bays. We essentially really, because we don't have the linear curb space, we really have no choice but to go into the lot and take a significant part of the lot. You see this ride hail area here, that's really just a couple of those spots. And we also talk about introducing parallel parking in the alley. We don't impact that a lot, but we have 6 metered spaces lost and 49 parking lot spaces. Limited changes on the street. Project, operator restroom, bicycle racks and lockers, all those things that are part of the project requirements stay. We do have a little bit of greenscape that we can add back. See advantages. Obviously, when you get off the street completely, it's an inherently safer operation, but it does have major impacts on the long-term parking. Bus movements in and out of the lot being shared with cars is not desirable. And passengers are crossing this bus area versus option 1 where they can just stay on the pad. I forgot, I'm going to jump back to option 1 too and just mention that option 1 does function as a public sidewalk too. I should probably mention that, and it's wide enough to do that. So parking impacts, Adam, on this one?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. So you can see, again, with the amount of data we have so far, pretty low utilization in this lot. Definitely increases when you get towards the evening. But throughout the earlier part of the day, at least according to May 2021, lower utilization there.
And lastly, option 3 is between 8th and 9th on New Hampshire, near the farmer's market area. So in this one, the station area is removed, station activity, excuse me, is removed from the street. We are showing dedicated parking loading area behind here. We do realize that there are light poles and other things back there that need to be taken into consideration that would have to be addressed in design, but we're showing some of that parking being put back there. This is pretty big impact. It has a nice connection to Massachusetts, but again, in order to meet the design requirements, we really have to take nearly the entire lot. A lot of regrading work as a disadvantage because of the elevations here on the street versus the lot, and make bus movements in and out of here. Limited area for green space, just a lot of hard surface compared to option 1 in both option 2 and 3, but all the same design requirements. Significant parking impacts, 4 metered spaces and 86 parking lot spaces. Although we do add back 14 or attempt to do that in the alley, the net loss of 76.
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. As Tony mentioned, pretty high number of spaces, and you see higher utilization in this lot. Still a little bit of room, but higher utilization than what we see in the other.
And I think we can come back to this slide at the end. This is, Adam has talked about some of this, but let's go all the way back. I just want to make one more comment that I forgot on option 1A, and that is that we do a right turn, right in, right out only here. We improve the size of this entrance a bit. And with the center turn lane, we don't feel like we impact. We heard from the businesses that parking and deliveries were important to them. So we feel that there's still adequate room for deliveries to access this back as they do today. And the back of the house operation should be able to function fine. With that, I can go to whatever screen folks would like, and we can talk more in detail about whatever you'd like.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. Mike, I might suggest we may just check and see if there's any members of the public that want to make comment between the presentation and when PTAC starts discussing.
I agree. Do any members of the public have any comments on, first, the central facility at Bob Billings and Crestline, and second, the downtown transfer center?
This is Brad Allen. I'm a member of the public, but also director of Lawrence Public Library. So I'd speak kind of both hats here. And I do just want to say, you know, we've been, as the current bus hub, we've been studying this whole thing pretty carefully, and are excited to see some progress. I have less comment on the Bob Billings and Crestline location. Other than I did talk to Adam about the possibility of seeing if there's any way that the city wants to integrate any kind of pop-up, you know, library services or something there. You know, it might be another good rider amenity based on costs on the project, but that's something for another time. I just, you know, I'm studying these. I want to throw my support to the 800 block of Vermont. You know, bus access is really important to lots of people ride the bus that use the library, and having this near the library but not on the 700 block is really great. As you probably know, and as John Thornburg, you know, mentioned, the 700 block has kind of been problematic. There's no mid-block way to really put a crosswalk, and so luckily things have been pretty safe, but this, you know, being just south of the library, it will make much safer crossing to the library, people using crosswalks and things like that. And it's also a good location. We just, for me, when we look at all these places downtown, this is one that on behalf of the library and my role as the director, we're excited about this location. And I just wanted to show up today to lend my support to that. That's really about all I have to add. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. And I really like your idea of a pop-up library. Give or take our budgetary constraints, I would definitely love to see something like that at the central facility. So thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to comment at this time?
Mike, we do have a gentleman here in the commission room who'd like to comment.
Come on up, Dwight.
Your concepts for Crestline and Bob Billings kind of limits how you get around because of the stoplight for one thing, and I have driven vehicles as big as these buses. And what you've got right there is going to be difficult for them to get in and out. I don't care how hard you know, what you think you've made it, but it is going to be difficult for them. And that light is going to cause some issues. There again, if you had built it downtown, and it would be in the center of the block where you don't have to deal with stoplights. And I've seen so many people in Lawrence, they really don't like stoplights. I've almost been hit 2 or 3 times here in the last month by people not paying attention to stoplights, and Bob Billings is no different, especially when you have all those university students who live in those apartments to the north of where you want to put your station. But that's what you want to do, then, you know, feel free, but you better take into consideration that stoplight, because that's going to be a big issue for your drivers, and they will complain about it. I can guarantee they will complain about it. Now, if you go ahead and do it down at Crestline and Bob Billings, I don't see a real decent plan here for downtown, because one, you don't protect the passengers from the weather. You have a nice little canopy over the sidewalk, and that's all fine and good, but that's not going to protect them from the rain, the snow, things like that, and the wind. So if you're going to do it and putting it on New Hampshire, you're taking all that parking up, and you have no place to put it. Right now, Lawrence has a problem with parking. The city commissioners have owned up to that fact that they have a problem with parking. And what you're doing on New Hampshire will not, that creates even a bigger problem. So whatever parking you take away in any lots downtown, unless you compensate for that, like a parking garage, we have 2 of them, what's another one? The plans are it's going to make it worse downtown than it is right now. I was downtown, I think it was Saturday night, and the traffic downtown and even the parking lots were almost full. So it's going to create a problem, and when you get students in town, it's going to create even a bigger problem for you. So you're going to have to be able to allow the passengers to have some protection from the weather, whatever you do. And the drivers are going to have to be very vigilant, especially at Crestline and Bob Billings with that stoplight there. Because people coming down that hill from the Lead Center, they're not really going to be looking for buses. So you guys do whatever you want to do. I will tell you right now, it's a mistake. I've seen other bus transit systems around the country, and this is really a mistake. But the city commission has made their mind up, I guess, so I guess I'm done with anything I have to say. You guys can do what you want, but you're going to have problems, and I don't think you want problems. I think you want a system that's going to function well, and right now I can't see it happening.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public on the Zoom channel who want to comment? Hearing nothing.
Is it okay to make one additional comment, Mike? I know I already talked.
Oh, go ahead, Brad. Yeah.
I want to respect the formality of the meeting, which I am poor at doing most of the time. But I did want to say, I mean, another argument for this location compared to the others is if you are getting into parking, and I meant to mention this before, this is the one that is the closest to the garage at the 700 block of Vermont. So, you know, you're losing parking in this area, but, you know, right above that and just to the north and west, you've got a garage that I park in most every day, and to this point is not at capacity. We'll have those issues, you know, as the town grows, but as of now, just geographically downtown, this is convenient to if people can't park here, there is a big parking garage that I would love to see us have more people parking in, just as a community. I know people don't like parking in parking garages, but that is there, and I meant to mention that, so apologies.
Thank you, Brett.
Can I make another comment about the parking?
Sure, come on back up.
That was a good comment about the parking garage by the library. But the one thing you said is, for now. You can't look for the now. You've got to look to the future, how Lawrence is going to grow. And if you look at now, you're always going to have to be building something somewhere. So try to get ahead of it. You're going to spend more money trying to get ahead of it than if you had just gone ahead and put more thought into it and put more, a little bit more expense into it and take care of the issue now for, say, 15, 20 years down the road. Taking care of something now for 5 years is not going to work because Lawrence is going to grow. That's a guarantee, too. I've seen it. I've been here 17 years, and I've seen how Lawrence has grown. And it's still going to grow. So don't plan for now. You've got to plan for the future, 15, 20 years down the road. The study, the transportation study, looked at 20 years down the road. And apparently nobody's read it. Apparently nobody's read the comments that the citizens have made about the bus transfer stations. Everybody wants to do what they want to do, and that's all fine and good. So I'm glad I don't have access to the computer because I saw where it says go on to Lawrence Listens. Well, I don't think you guys listen because your studies have shown that people want it downtown. Your input sessions have shown that they want it downtown, but nobody wants to listen to the people who are going to use the buses. That's the other issue. You got to listen to people who's going to use it.
I would like to note for the record that we do have 2 members of PTAC who claimed that they regularly ride the bus system and have extensive experience with dealing with the complexities of getting on and off the bus at the current location. Thank you for your comment. Are there any members of PTAC who'd like to? Oh, Margreta, yes, please go ahead.
This is Margreta DeFries, and I would just like to add in my capacity as someone who has ridden the bus in Lawrence as long as it's been here, but I also work at Transportation Services and help run KU on Wheels. You know, there's been many opportunities and attempts for us to proceed with this project, and some of where we've ended up is because people don't want transit in their backyard. And we are doing the best we can with the locations that are available to us that have the size and footprint that are needed in order to have the size of transit center that we need to have in order to make everything meet up. And so I recognize that the commenter in the commission room, whose name I just completely blanked out on, he has a good point. A lot of people ride the bus and a lot of them are going downtown, but we're very limited because of the space and size that we need. And unfortunately, that is a fact of life that if we had planned for this 20 or 30 years ago, it would be a very different picture today. Thanks.
Thank you, Margreta.
Mike, this is August, PTAC committee. I was curious if this is a good time to ask Mr. Allen's opinion of Mr. Thornburg's concerns. I didn't know the director of LPO would be on this call, or if you intend to do that later.
I'm happy to answer or give you my perspective. And I know John, we've talked a good bit. I mean, very early on, right there by the garage where there's the big stairs that, you know, go down it's an ADA ramp and a staircase on the south side of the lawn. some people I think thought that was a cut through, and a couple cars did just like pull in right there at the curb cuts for the handicap spots and drive down there. And because there was nothing there, and so we I can't remember if Porter or who came up with the idea to start putting one of the sculptures there as a visual indicator that this is not a street, and it stopped. It ended it. And to John's point, and this is all hearsay from my understanding too, is the sculpture they had picked out for the most recent one, the person had heard that it was there to help indicate that this is not a place that you should drive, and didn't want it to be hit by a car, which none of the others had been hit by a car. We were disappointed. So we were really excited for that sculpture to actually be there. And the sculpture that we got was the one that we got, and it wasn't really suitable to try to be an indicator of trap. John had a picture there. It was of the sculpture of the homeless woman that they put on a bench. There was then graffiti was vandalized and destroyed, unfortunately, which the other one would not have been. But at any rate, that's the story of it. There were a couple cars early on. Now, whether that's just training people about things or not, I don't know. But the sculptures had helped. What that has to do with bus ridership, I'm not really certain and can't really comment on. My comment is we've had folks from the city and, including previous city commissioners and folks from the city to really study figuring out some way to get some kind of mid-block crosswalk, and it's just too tight. There's nowhere to do it, like with the AT&T building there with the cut in for AT&T, there's nowhere to do it. So people jaywalk. I mean, nobody goes to 7th Street or 8th Street from the bus to walk over to the library. They just walk around, and fortunately nothing has happened, but it is not ideal. That's why I really like the 800 block, is it's super close, and you're going to walk up to the library and cross over. It just is a more safe way to approach things. I feel like I've strayed from the question you asked me, August, but we did have some unfortunate incidents, but those sculptures really help serve as a visual indicator that this is not a street. That's the short of it. Happy to elaborate if you'd like.
Thank you very much.
Are there any PTAC members who have a comment on the locations and the designs?
Yeah, Lance Fave, Vice Chair PTAC. I have a couple comments and a question. As far as Crestline is concerned, I've been a bus rider for the 20-some years now that we've had a bus system in Lawrence, or a public one anyway. I've watched it grow, and I've also watched the various research and discussion and attempts to try to find a reasonable transfer hub. And I've, because of my experiences as a bus rider all over the city, not just downtown, but all over the city, I have grown more supportive of the Crestline location because of where the core of ridership is and where that core of ridership is going. Downtown is a destination. It is not the only one. And I think we need to look at the entire connectability of the entire city. And that's what I think is being done with having both a Crestline location and still having 5 buses downtown, which is appropriate. Also, if you look at some of the route redesign studies that have been done, that kind of shows you how that connectivity would actually make for a more efficient and effective transit map. And as far as the safety issue of that streetlight and that stop sign, I do agree with, and I have brought that up, and I know that is something that is being discussed. I also think that the 8th and 9th, the 800 block of New Hampshire, of the 3 downtown recommendations, is the one that makes the most sense. And we can certainly look at details on that to see if we can help with a little more shelter. That's something I suppose that could be discussed. It looks the best as far as pedestrian safety to me. Also, the question that I had when you do your traffic studies, which I kind of think we need more of anyway, or your parking deficits, is are we adding the parking spaces that are currently used on the 700 block for the buses and for the transit vehicles? Are we adding those spaces back into the data that's before us now? Because I don't see it. Maybe it's there and I just don't see it. So that's, I guess, my question.
And this is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. Those spaces on the 700 block that could potentially be added back in are not shown as added back in as part of this work yet. I think there's still some discussion around internally with staff about, if we introduce a two-way cycle track on the 800 block of Vermont, could there be plans for continuing that to create a more cohesive, protected bike network downtown? So I think there's some discussions that still need to be had on that mode of transportation, on if adding parallels back to the 700 block of Vermont is the most utilitarian. Should we be thoughtful about, is that some future cycle track or not? But that is still kind of an open, on the table sort of option. And you're right, those numbers do not reflect potential to add that back in.
Thank you, Lance and Adam. Are there any other members of PTAC who'd like to comment at this time?
Gregory Critchlow, PTAC. One of the questions I had, and wanted to pose it last time, was you were looking at a very schematic and programmatic understanding of the placement of both facilities. But one of the questions earlier is some of the detail about the actual bays and the overhangs and things of that nature. Is it going to be a situation to where those become a design that is standard, or is there another discussion what those particular bays look like? And even the transit facility itself that houses potential restrooms and facilities of maintenance and things of that nature. What will that aesthetic be, if that's even thought about at that point, at this point?
I'll let Scott answer that. Scott's designed, I don't know how many, a lot of multimodal facilities. Are you still there, Scott?
Case was like, who's going to
Yeah, one second, folks. Yeah, my apologies. Ask the question again there, Tony.
The question was, what are we looking at for design of the multimodal facility? And then secondly, what kind of ideas do you have for design? And then aesthetically downtown, are these just going to be, bargain basement shelters? That's not the way the questioner asked it, but, what will there be design elements, these canopies, these shelters, this downtown stop? What can we do?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, this is, we're at the part of the project where we're coming up with the layout. What's the best use of the space? What are the amenities? I don't think we're at that level of detail yet to discuss that. There will be a visioning session after we work out these layouts, and then we can get into those very questions. I will say that you are correct. There are options that we can do traditional shelters. Those tend to be the most cost effective. We have done a hybrid of those, which is that we can work with the manufacturer and come up with something using their kit of parts it's a little bit more specific to any kind of branding you would want to do. And then we can go to completely custom. But again, with the idea of the kit of parts that anything we design would be easily replaceable in case of vandalism and what have you. So those are all things coming. We're just not really there quite yet. I would also say that the comments on rain, wind, and elements, those also are going to be in the conversation. We don't typically do facilities that we're not thinking about all three of those things. And being from Minneapolis, just taking it, to the extreme because of the cold weathers, there's even push button for infrared heaters. So not saying you would need to go that far, but those are the things that we would be putting into the conversation. The reason we don't get into those right now is they become distracting to the larger question of where is this located, how many buses, and how is this safe and effectively working from a circulation point of view from both vehicles and people.
That said, I'll just add for the questioner that I've seen Scott's designs over the last 25 years, and you're gonna have something that is very nice and cost effective and sustainable. And so he's being a little bit too humble there, but yes.
Thank you. Gregory, do you have any other comments or questions?
Not at the moment. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Any other members of PTAC then? Any other comments, questions, or concerns?
Nick Kuzmiak of PTAC. I realize that depending on how your Zoom frames are set up, you may not have seen me raising my hand, so that explains it. All right, I'm gonna start off.
Apologies. Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't quite hear you. You were breaking up a bit. Am I the only one hearing the bad audio, or is that everybody hearing that?
A little bit unstable. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, sweet. All right, I wanted to start before I get into specific comments, just to kind of to speak to some of the issues that were brought up at during the public comment, because I feel like as PTAC members, it's sometimes our job to be advocates for public transit and make sure that there are no misconceptions and misreadings of the history of how we got to where we are. So I just wanted to start with that. First of all, saying parking has been studied downtown fairly extensively, and despite negative perceptions, the fact remains there is enough parking for the most part. It may not be exactly where you want it and when you want it, but there's definitely enough parking downtown. Adding a new garage is not a trivial matter. At an average of about $20,000 per elevated parking space, we simply don't have the money in the budget to pull something like that off easily, especially when we're really backlogged on infrastructure, all that jazz. People complain enough about taxes as it is, so this is kind of a non-starter. As to the centralized location being a poor choice, I would counter that this location has been vetted through multiple studies that have addressed location, connectivity, and has also been supported through a direct letter by the neighborhood around, which I can't say for the other locations that were chosen, which specifically elicited some rather NIMBY responses. So this is the one location that worked and would actually have us. So the idea of a centralized location is hopefully evident, is really to make the bus routes more efficient. So this really goes hand in hand with the ongoing route redesign study, and a geographically central location is pretty critical to having those efficient routes, which is exactly what Lance was saying. This is a bus service for the whole city, not just for downtown. And I would say this is literally planning for the future, because as the city has grown to the west, Crestline and Bob Billings are increasingly the center of town. And there is still the downtown transfer center included. So I feel like we're checking a lot of boxes here. And finally, as to issues with bus operators doing turns, I would say the city staff has been pretty good, both on the MSO side and on parking and transit, and making sure bus operators kind of aren't screwed over by certain changes in geometry of turns. I mean, even for example, 19th and Louisiana Street, or maybe it's 21st in Louisiana, when the bike boulevard was being proposed for that area, they actually did tests of, can the bus make this turn? So I feel like to assume that we've disregarded the needs of operators is kind of selling the staff short here. So just wanted to get that all out into the open. As for the actual transit facility, so I brought up a decent amount of these at the joint meeting between MMTC and PTAC, but I wanted to go over a couple of these again just because the rest of PTAC is now in this meeting. So sorry if this runs a little bit long or also has spoken too fast, but I'm going to do my best to make sure other people can speak. So the drainage area on the central transfer site, I think this is kind of wild, but it is a potential opportunity to add some skate park infrastructure. As we saw at the recent CIP meeting for the city, apparently there was an urgent need for a lot more skate park infrastructure, and plenty of cities around the world and even in the US have used the site of a detention basin to also serve as something you can do when it's not raining. So just something to think about. I'm sure it's not in the budget, but if there's any way to allow for retrofitting later, that could really serve us well in the future on the Parks and Rec side. I think in the central locations, I think the multimodal facility is it's better suited to be on the island to maximize pedestrian safety of both passengers and operators. If you're trying to rush and make a quick bathroom break between transfers, you're more likely to maybe have some errors in calculation when crossing a busy street. So if we can eliminate that, we can hopefully eliminate a lot of vehicle-person conflicts. For the central facility, due to grading issues, I would steer us towards option 2 or 3 if possible, because it would hopefully save a decent amount of money in not having to cut and fill a lot on that site. Option 3 shows a facility in between 2 canopies that are not contiguous. Seems like kind of a missed opportunity to extend it by maybe just 2 feet and just basically make a full connection from the top to the bottom side of the bus base for a canopy. Let's see. For the downtown facility, I would highly recommend, if we're going to have green space, we should make it useful and integrate it into the recommendations of the downtown master plan, which has recently been, well, it's almost completed. To that effect, I think a public bathroom would be highly desirable, partly because there are a lot of people who don't have the privilege of easily walking into businesses and such and using the bathrooms, as well as the fact that it's a bus stop for not just the operators but for the passengers as well. So I think a public bathroom would be highly desirable there. Next up is the 800 block of Vermont kind of presents a really rare opportunity to, again, check some of those boxes for the recently completed downtown master plan. So there's a need for public space, a need for friendlier pedestrian realm, and to eventually, I guess, save a lot of the surface parking lots for future redevelopment into either a garage or a building. What I think is tricky here is that I don't know how limited the consultants were in the RFP process for kind of what you could imagine where the lines were with which you could color between. But I think looking at the access points in this 800 block, there really aren't a lot other than what would already be taken away from the parking lot and that southwest private parking lot that can also be accessed by the alley. So technically speaking, you can actually cut off the whole street to anything but bus, pedestrians, and bikes, which if done correctly could basically be a very long public square, which you don't currently have downtown. Now, city staff and MSO has noted that there is a potential for, a disadvantage in circulation of cars, but I should note that cars aren't the only way that you can visit downtown. And at a certain point, I think we have to balance, things that you actually want to visit and see and do downtown and space for cars. And I think this is a really good opportunity to maybe think outside the box a little bit, plan for the future, and make use of this rather expensive downtown master plan that we just bought. All right, for the canopy, I would like to share my screen if that's possible. I'll try to be relatively quick with this here. Where is the screen share button?
Tony, you will need to disable your screen share for Nick to be able to.
Oh, okay,
I'm
sorry.
trying to find my control here. Stop share. There we go.
Okay. Is it under? Where is the button?
If you're full screen, it'll be up near the top.
Oh, geez. Is it enabled for us? Oh, sorry, that wasn't the button. Geez, you'd think as a millennial, I know exactly how to do this, but I am not. Oh, there it is. It's green. That's why I couldn't see it. All right. So I mentioned last time that it would be ideal in the downtown bus transfer center to have canopies of some sort that could shade, from sun and wind and rain and everything. the entire length instead of just the bus bays. And I think it was misinterpreted as assuming that we need bus height ones the whole way. And yeah, those are pretty expensive. They're pretty fancy. And I don't think it's even particularly effective for normal pedestrian shading because, you know, if rain's going sideways, this is not very helpful. That being said, the country of Singapore does an amazing job of putting walkways over, or sorry, putting canopies over pretty much any walkway you can imagine. And in a country that is bombarded by equatorial sunlight and torrential downpours, this is a huge advantage. So it makes walking so much easier. And they really aren't particularly expensive. I mean, yeah, that one looks pretty fancy, right? But in a lot of spots, I mean, it's literally just corrugated sheet metal over the same kind of supports that you'd have for a carport. So it's pretty easy stuff. And I feel like this is something that we as a city could come behind. Finally, in terms of visual cues, I wanted to point this spot out in Austin where I used to both bike and walk and take the bus to. Now, this reminds me of the idea of putting a bike path in between the pedestrian realm and the public transit realm. And while this is a 35-mile-an-hour street, and I think separation of uses is pretty necessary because it would be dangerous otherwise, on a 20-mile-an-hour street like Vermont, it seems a little bit over the top, and I feel like would maybe cause more trouble than it's worth. Hearing the idea of protected bike lanes downtown is, I feel like maybe a perspective from people who've only ever biked in small towns, where, you know, the instinct is to separate bikes from cars at all costs, regardless of the context. Where other countries seem to excel and economize on their bike lanes is only creating protected infrastructure where you are, you know, at a very different speed than the cars on the street. At 20 miles an hour, unless you're a kid on training wheels, you're really going to be much closer to 20 miles an hour than you are going to be towards pedestrians who are going to be crossing from the bus to the parking lot. So just wanted to keep that in mind, that this is not a high-speed street. Finally, sorry, there's one more thing here. I think, all right, I think the idea of the center turn lane for option 1B is, or sorry, 1A is something that we can probably get rid of because there's not a lot of access points on that 800 block. So having a center turn lane is really just a lane for nothing. There's very few people who will use that except for maybe delivery drivers. But then you get to option 1B where the turn lane has been removed, and instead you have the sawtooth parking, which I don't really have a problem with. But the cross section showed that you have a 15-foot southbound lane and a 13-foot northbound lane. Typical highway wainlets are about 14 feet. So these are the same width as a interstate highway lane, which, as we know, the wider the street is, the more you are encouraged to speed. Those sawtooth parking spaces may not even be particularly well utilized, which means that there aren't going to be a lot of other close-in visual cues to deter folks from speeding downtown. So this is truly a 20-mile-an-hour street. You need to either make sure it is kind of clustered, kind of concentrated and uncomfortable to drive fast on, or make smaller lanes, or just cut off cars entirely, because otherwise people are going to drive what they feel comfortable driving. Speed limits be damned, right? So anyway, that's a lot of stuff to go over, but hopefully at least some of that could come under consideration. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Nick. Adam, I would like to note that we're at 5:23 and we still have one full agenda item left and any other transit staff and PTAC member items. So we need to prioritize.
Yeah, this is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. Certainly don't want to cut off conversation, so staff is happy to accommodate that. I know that on our second item, we do need quorum in order to direct the chair to write a letter of support for some grant monies that we're chasing. So I'll leave that.
When is the application due for that?
Due on the 25th, so this is the last time that we'll see you before.
Okay, I think we need to discuss that then, unfortunately, and table further discussion on the transfer facility until next month when we get updated designs. So let's proceed to agenda item 2, Access, Innovation, and Collaboration Grants.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager.
So we attached a number of different grant application narratives for you all. The state of Kansas has the Access, Innovation, and Collaboration grants, which are transit-focused grants. They offer a pretty wide range of guidance of a lot of different things we can apply for, things from technology to infrastructure, bus-related components, facility-related components. So we really put our heads together with a lot of different initiatives that we're looking at pursuing, things that we really think will make transit more convenient to use, more quality experience, and came up with 5 different applications. So I'm happy to walk through some of that if the group desires. In general, a couple things I would say is in total, if the state were to grant us everything that we ask for, it's about $3.3 million worth of projects. It would cost us a local match of around $660,000. So we've submitted everything with an 80-20 split, 20% local match and 80% state. A number of these projects are things we need to do anyways. So these are ways that we can tap into state monies to help alleviate some of our local cost. And we think it's a smart thing for us to be pursuing these opportunities when they come along. Certainly through the process, early indications from the state is that they're quite interested in a lot of the things we'd put together in concept form for developing these larger applications. So I don't know that we'll be confident to get everything, but I do think we are in good position to get some of these. So because we're short on time, I maybe will ask, and I'm happy to do it either way. Is there a level of detail? Would you like me to go through each of these? Do we want to jump to specific PTAC questions about each of these topics? I'm happy to go either way, Mike.
The main question I have is what's the risk in terms of if we don't get these grants? And it sounds like from what you've described that we will probably proceed no matter what, and we'll have to dip into capital funds to be able to accommodate the projects.
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. That is generally the case. There are probably a couple of these things lower on our list that we wouldn't absolutely have to do. But a number of them, amenity improvements, pursuing a microtransit option as part of our route redesign, rebranding vehicles as part of an ongoing effort with KU to bring a joint brand together that kind of unifies the services we offer. A lot of these things will need to move forward even without grant funding. So that is part of the risk reward.
Thank you. Margreta also brought up a question. The local match, does that include a share from KU or just City of Lawrence funding?
There are a couple of these opportunities that we are working with KU to determine how much local match they potentially could help with. But certainly there's a couple items that benefit us both. The rebranding of vehicles to come to a cohesive brand is certainly one of those things that we would want to partner with KU on as far as the local match.
Lance Fave, Vice Chair PTAC, do you need me for quorum on this? Because I got to catch a bus. I literally have to run and catch a bus. If you need me for quorum, then I have to.
We have right now myself, August is still here, Frederick is still here, Gregory is still here, Nick is still here. That's 5 of us with Alan and you leaving.
So I think we're okay, Lance.
Okay. All right, guys. Sorry, but I got to catch a bus.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lance. Do any of the remaining PTAC members have specific questions or want to dive into detail on any of the 5 grants? Okay, barring that, then I think now is the time to entertain a motion to support these grants.
Nick Kuzmiak, PTAC. I would motion that we approve that as PTAC, we direct the chair to write a letter of support for each of the Access, Innovation, and Collaboration grant applications.
Thank you, Nick. Is there a second?
August Rudisell, PTAC member, I second that.
Thank you, August. Felice, could you go through roll call and count up votes, please?
Lance, Max,
Aye.
Mike,
I better vote aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Alan, so Gregory,
Aye.
Bill, August,
Aye.
Freddie,
Aye. I heard 6 ayes, so I believe that carries the motion. Thank you very much. I will work on drafting a letter and circulate with Lance and Adam for drafting purposes before submitting and get it in time for our, you said May or June 25th submission, Adam?
That's correct.
Okay, I'll get it to you in time for that. Thank you. Next on the agenda with our limited time is future agenda work session items to add. I am guessing there are none. Hearing nobody jumping at the gun on that, I am going to jump to other items. August and Frederick, do you have any updates to make on the route redesign?
I mean, I don't have anything. August, we just saw PTAC committee. I don't have anything specific. They went over the stakeholder meeting presentation and asked for feedback and kind of explained how they're going to present the material to the public. And it all looked really good. It looked really informative, really explained what they're looking for as far as what we have now and what we want to get to. And gave the samples. I just displayed all the samples, all the graphics they're going to use. And I think the public commentary should be interesting on what they get back.
Thank you, August. Frederick, do you have anything else to add?
No, what August said was a good ship.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is transit staff items. Adam, I see a Lono grant application update and an update on the mobile fare payment RFP.
Yes, Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. Just a couple things before those two items. I'll just build on what August mentioned by saying that we should have communications going out tomorrow about those stakeholder and public meetings for route redesign that are upcoming. We've got a number of things planned for next week, the week of the 21st. So, of course, virtual meetings you can get involved in. We're also looking at a way at the public library for the general public to design their own routes, essentially, alter existing routes or draw new routes, both on paper and on a digital remix tool that we have. So we can use that to incorporate into some of the early drafts that the consultant will be putting together. So keep your eye out for that information. We'll have that going out tomorrow. The other thing, I don't believe I had an opportunity last month. Max Schieber is on the call. Max is a KU student who works as the transportation coordinator for KU on Wheels and is now part of PTAC. He has taken over Logan Stewart, who held the same position at KU prior. So good to have Max here and have some student voice. But Max, do you want to say hi or anything else about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm a KU student. I'll be a senior this year studying public administration. I'm excited to work with you guys. My email is max.schieber@ku.edu. I'm pretty sure it's on the website. If you need anything from me, thank you guys all very much.
Glad to have you on board, Max.
All right, and Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. The couple other things, I was hoping to have some exciting news about Lono. We're right at the time period where we expect FTA to be making some announcements soon. We are just over 2 months since we submitted that application for 2 additional electric buses to add on to the 5 that we plan to get this upcoming spring. So maybe at the next month, but we're in the time period where they should be making an announcement soon. It's never an exact science. And then the mobile fare payment RFP, we received 3 proposals for that. We are looking through those to hopefully make a determination soon. We got some good proposals, and I think we'll have some good choices in front of us. Rollout on that type of system is pretty quick, so there will be some time in once we make a decision in developing contract and getting that approved. But then rollout time only takes like 4 to 6 weeks. So potentially by route changes in August or sometime late summer, early fall, we should have the option for people to buy and use transit passes on their phones. So that's an exciting development that should be not very costly for us to roll out and provide definitely a brand new benefit for transit riders.
That's great news. Thank you, Adam. Do any of the remaining members of PTAC have questions about those updates? Okay, normally I would offer longer bout, but we are 6 minutes over, and I would like to adjourn so that I can get back to enjoying the rest of my vacation with my family.
Adam Weigel, can I hold you all up for like 1 more minute here? Please join us if you have time at the library tomorrow for some of the outreach we're doing related to the facility, or Saturday. I put that information in the chat, but we have a number of tabling opportunities, and I know since some of our discussion was a little short tonight, happy to talk through more of that with you all if you have time.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam. With that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. We will meet again next month on July 12th. Same time. Not sure about in person or remote still, but I will plan on being remote still. Have a good night.
Thank you.